Welcome to Everything Life Coaching with John Kim and Noelle Cordeaux, founders of JRNI Coaching. If you're inspired to begin your own life coaching practice or just want to learn a little bit more about what it's all about, visit jrni.co. That's JRNI.co.
Hey guys, on today's episode, we're going to talk about something really important, especially for these times, and that is mindful listening as a practice. Noelle, good morning.
Good morning.
I miss you saying not Chucky on the podcast title.
Oh,
Now I'm just
oh,
JK.
I can start doing that again.
It secretly made me feel special for a little bit.
Oh, well, now that you verbalized it, I can make sure to make you feel special all the time.
Yeah, so that's aligned with a little sarcasm. I told Noelle to not call me Chucky because that was my Korean name slash teachers couldn't pronounce my Korean name, so they called me Chucky. And I said it was a trigger, and I was kind of half joking. So then she types in not Chucky on the podcast title as me,
Oh,
but
yeah. Yeah, when I'm
which was funny.
inviting John to the podcast, I'm saying this is not Chucky.
Right. Now it's back to JK, just your average.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's only 5,823 JKs in Los Angeles, but that's okay.
Well, we can come up with some other names for you, bud. I have faith.
Okay. Yeah, I have a lot of names. Um, Mindful listening, especially today, I think this is a man, this is such an important topic.
It is. And, as we kind of hit on when we were exploring this topic, and just so everybody knows, John wouldn't let me keep talking until we hit record because it was getting too good. So you can thank
Yes.
John for this for
Yeah,
this
and I,
conversation.
I think I think it's one of the what I've learned the best tricks is don't record and I mean record early and then start talking because sometimes you and I will have conversations before we hit record and sometimes I feel like oh that we should record that or that was really powerful or all of that stuff. So
Deep and powerful all day.
yeah, absolutely. So
So what we were talking about was how the world has changed and how that has forced a change, whether we wanted it or not, with the way that we relate to people that we are in relationship with.
yeah. Yeah, and I think that we're still not gonna I think there's more to come, meaning even if, the the door's open and we're allowed to go outside, there's still gonna be a lot of residue. There's still gonna be weirdness, there's still gonna be disconnect, isolation, and us, having to deal with, what's coming up as well as our relationships.
Yes, I completely agree. What does it mean to you to be in relationship with somebody else?
Oh, man. Today, right now
Yes.
it's so multi-layered, a part of this, especially now that I'm a dad, and so I technically have a family, it's made me feel, protective, it's made me feel kind of like this basic instinct of, you know, um, hibernation, protection, all that whole family stuff, and closer, to, my girlfriend and daughter, but at the same time, it's also made me, miss my friends and kind of feel weird when you're walking outside and people aren't looking you in the eye or walking around you, and so it's made me feel kind of disconnected to humans in a way.
Yeah, and I was just thinking about this earlier today based on what I know of how human brains work. And we are very similar to cows. When humans are separated from others in our own society, we begin to naturally act like a diseased cow that is left behind for the good of the herd. And it's ironic because we're all being isolated right now for the good of the herd. But what's happening inside of our brains is that we naturally begin to scan social interaction and view it as threat. So,
Mm.
this happened, especially where you are, John, in Los Angeles already, where people would dive off the sidewalk if you smiled at them. And now it's just like
Right.
amplified with threat.
Yeah, yeah. And if you are not wearing a mask or sneezing, then it's a whole it's a whole get ready to run.
Yeah, it's going to change the way that we perceive and the way that we relate to each other. The last time that this really, I mean, there have been, major activating events throughout history, but I was kind of just tracing this anthropologically for fun. And it happened after the Industrial Revolution when there was a
Mm,
mass migration of people to cities from farms, and nobody knew each other. They didn't, they used to live in small communities, and now
right,
they had to kind of figure out how to evaluate each other. And then it happened again after World War II, where there was a mass exodus of people from cities into communities. And I think that we're going to start seeing that again, where things are going to
mm,
change and people are going to be going different places. And what I was thinking of too is, tribal systems, and even the early days of America when it was being settled on the frontier, that how families would leave with just each other in a covered wagon. And those
right.
relationships, the relationships that you call family, are the ones that sustain you.
Yeah, there's almost this kind of us being shaken and going back to the basics,
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
know, a
going
little
back
bit of
to the
that.
basics in real ways, because there's no escape. You can't
Right.
go out to a pub. You can't go out to a sporting event or a concert. You have to face yourself, and we have to face each other.
Yeah, and speaking of mindfulness, I mean, that's kind of what mindfulness is. I mean, to me, it's going back to what's real, going back to the basics, going back to um, simplifying,
Simplifying, being present,
being
and,
present. Yeah.
so much of the simplicity with mindfulness and mindful listening and active listening as a practice has to do with building the muscle in your brain that it takes to really engage with the message of whoever is speaking to you.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes it difficult is this idea of building a muscle. I think a lot of people, especially when it comes to listening, they don't see it as a practice. It's like you're either listening or you're not. But this idea of building a muscle, listening as a practice, that is kind of foreign to most people, which is
It
why we don't
is, and
listen.
right, and the question that I always start with is, how did we get here? And I think that if we're looking at technology, um, and how it really progressed over the last 20 years, it's different. Like when we had pagers, you were still picking up the phone and having a conversation with somebody. You couldn't read the messages that were coming through.
Right,
And
right.
so I think that listening really got lost. And if you look at, or pre-COVID, being in a restaurant, you'd see two people sitting across from each other, each looking at their phones. And I'm
Yeah.
thinking, why don't they just text each other? Be done with it?
Right, right. Why are they even sitting at the same table?
Yeah. And so technology has not only changed the way that we perceive listening, but it has changed the way that we receive messages in sound bites.
Mm. So, what exactly is mindful listening for people who are like, first, let's talk about the definition of it.
Yeah, so it's bringing full moment to moment awareness to actively engage with the person who's talking to you. And let's validate. This is a hard thing to do. As we've
Mm-hmm.
described, we've all gotten out of practice with it. It has become not part of our social custom to listen deeply to someone.
Mm-hmm.
And it is, I believe, vital for our families and our friendships and our work relationships and our personal relationships to start doing this right now.
Yeah, and one of the things that as I was going through my therapist journey, because before then, I was not a good listener. Is that listening isn't about words? A lot of people think that I do listen. I listen to everything you're saying, but are you also listening to body language? Are you listening to someone's energy? Are you listening to the what they're saying with their eyes and their emotions and all of that? So I think mindful listening is not just about words.
You're right. And this goes into coaching, and mindfulness is a huge aspect of coaching. And the piece that coaches pull forward in their practice is the aspect of active listening, where they are listening, as you described, to the subtext, to the
Mm-hmm.
emotion, to the
Right.
nuance, to the words. and they are also opening with a non-judgmental
Yeah.
stance and awareness of the other person's story.
Yeah, most of us listen with judgment. We listen with an intention to try to sway conversations. I know, not even that long ago, when I was listening, I would already be thinking about a comeback. So,
Mhm.
which means I'm not listening, right? Which means that I'm trying to argue before the person's even done talking. So that definitely is not mindfulness or active listening.
And it's super common. It's super common, and I am guilty of when I'm coaching someone or when I'm engaged in our work through JRNI Coaching, I am very mindful of listening. I'm very mindful of my non-judgmental stance, and I strive really hard to hold that space of non-judgment. When I'm in my personal life, that goes out the window.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like a fitness trainer who basically do as I do, not as I, or do as I say, not as I do. That's my life.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
My mother, my father, my sister, and my husband will be like, "Yeah, she's judgy big time." And
yeah.
so, I think that if we start thinking about how to bring this into our personal lives, it could be really radical and transformative for the quality of the relationship. Like, what does it
Yeah.
mean to open and accept a partner or a friend or a family member without judgment?
How do you not judge? Is it start with being aware of when that judgment is coming in,
I
and
think
then
so.
yeah.
I think so, and that's a really good question that we can both kind of explore. Um, what do you physically experience when you are judging?
Tension. I when I have feelings of judgment, there's a constriction. There is a little bit of anxiety. All of that.
I experience the same thing, and I think that what you said about tension and anxiety is spot on. And if I'm really zeroing in on why that exists and why that is present, it's because you care so much.
Yeah, yeah,
That you wanna
absolutely.
control,
Yeah.
that you wanna control some aspect of somebody else's story, and that's just not possible.
Yeah, and I love that you brought it back to the body. I think that we're so heady, and we're such logical creatures that using our body as a radar, to notice how we feel when we are judgmental, I think is really great.
Yes, and so the alternative to a judgmental stance, which is trying to control, which is nervous, which is anxious, which is yearning and hoping and wishing, is to let it all go and have this platform, this foundation of inner calm
Hmm.
and a present state of awareness.
When you don't judge, there's so much freedom, and it's like when you judge, you know that saying that I don't know if it was jealousy or I don't know what it was, but you're drinking poison expecting the other person to die or something like
Mhm.
that. And I
Yeah.
think, which is kind of extreme and graphic, but I think judgment, it's the same thing where when you and I know it could be coming from care, but when you are judging someone, um, you're the one that's carrying that. You're the one that's carrying that weight, that sense of control, that anxiety, all of that.
And it's really terrifying to think of the opposite, to think about what it would be like to not try to control, to not try to influence or wield in our interpersonal relationships. At least for me, it feels really scary because y- it's layered. There are so many layers of what it means to be in a relationship, what it means to listen to someone, what it means to care for them, and what it means to let them go and be their own person.
When you don't control, you have nothing to hold on to, and that's you're absolutely right. It's terrifying, but I think it's also the greatest gift. When you can, especially the people that are the closest to you, because those are the people you care about the most. If you are supportive of whatever decisions they make and non-judgmental, and just going to champion their story no matter what, um, I that's such a gift.
It's such a gift and it's such a huge ask.
Yes,
It's
it is
such
a
a
yeah, right, exactly. Well, because
it's such a
we're not used to it.
No, we're not used to it. And it's almost ironic because of those relationships that are so very interconnected. The best possible thing that we can do for each other is give each other freedom, and the last thing we want to do is give each other that freedom.
Yeah, exactly. But you know what? We also want that freedom,
We
but we don't give it, you know?
hands down,
Yeah.
selfish,
Yeah.
selfish, twisted little nuggets we are. So, all right, this is reminding me of your container theory, and I think
Mm.
it's really applicable here. Can you talk a little bit about what the container theory is and how you coach on it and how you use it?
Yeah, just simply put, it's we all have a life space called a container. A lot of us have cracks in our container. You know, an obvious crack would be if you're in an abusive relationship, but we have hairline cracks. And my whole theory is that we could build ourselves a brand new container, and we can fix these cracks. And by doing so, then our growth isn't stunted, but it's organic if you choose to turn this into a lifestyle, so like a way of living. And so I teach that in our class at JRNI Coaching.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it's an awesome class. And so if I'm following this through and saying, okay, it's not enough for me to tend to my own container and my own cracks. That
Mm.
part of my job as being a responsible human, a responsible family member, a responsible global citizen is to also get into the practice of listening without attachment to my own map of the world.
Yes, and by doing so, you're actually helping someone else build their container, their safe space.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think the outcomes will be if we are able to do this successfully?
Oh man. I mean, in relationships, all the shields go down, right? In relationships, people aren't holding on to tug of war ropes. And so when you do this, now there's space for vulnerability. Now there's space to see someone. Now there's space for compassion and all of that stuff. And I think when people are coming in with judgment and not listening, or just listening to words, there's it's all depth, it's all defense, you know. And
Mhm.
so this is what I think it takes to kind of uh, break people open and to connect to them, you know, or connect to them again.
Yeah, and just, even being self-reflective as I'm listening to you, it is probably with folks that I've been in relationship been the fact that I haven't been doing this that's been putting those walls up.
Mm, yeah, and it's also something I think, especially younger with young love, it's not something that we even look for. You know, it's not on the top of our list, and I think it should be a non-negotiable. This is like soil.
Yeah, it really is. I've been joking around and playing with the term, the why do you do it that way game,
Mm.
since as we are all in COVID confinement, and the why do you do it that way game, no one wins ever
Yeah, yeah.
with that game. And I did that to my husband the other day. Why do you do it that way? And he said, you are always just looking for a reason to cut me down. And that
Mm,
shocked me. It
mm,
shocked me because I have never had that intention. And I said, "Do
right,
you really think that I
right,
sit there and just like wait for something?" And I'm like, "Ooh, let me
right.
pounce on it." And he acknowledged, probably no, but it really made me consider how I project and
Yeah.
how I hold my own container in that way.
I think that is amazing what you just said, the whole "why do you do it that way" game, because who can't relate to that? I mean,
Mhm.
especially in relationships where like, why do you open the chips that way? Why do you eat that way? Why do you leave your shoes? I mean, 1,000 of those a day. But what a great way into, you know, the everyday of life, and how we can be not listening mindfully when we're going, you know, at people that way,
Yeah, very much.
which we're
And
all guilty of, by the way.
so, how do we want to set this up as an experiment, as a practice? So, John, how, if you were to say, okay, I'm going to make this my priority for for the next, 24 hours to respond to my partner from a stance of active listening. How will you know if you're doing it, and what actions will you take to do it?
I will know by dropping into my body and feeling when I'm listening to someone if there's tension, if there's resistance, if there's you know blueprints that don't match, and I'm clenching my fist. And so if I know that, I know that I'm cracking someone else's container. I'm taking someone else's space hostage. And I know it sounds extreme, but I have to think of it extreme to be aware of it, right? So um, using my body as kind of a radar to gauge when I'm judgmental and when I'm um, kind of crossing the line. And even crossing the line doesn't have to mean, doing something to someone. I think you cross the line when you don't provide a space that is neutral and loving, but instead filled with judgment.
Yeah, and it's so hard.
Yeah, it's so
It's so
hard.
hard. I think that my biggest challenge is going to be actively keeping my mouth shut
Oh
and
yeah,
not
right.
speaking and
Yeah,
not
that
responding. And like, it might kill me, but I'm going to try.
that's the probably the hardest thing for me too is just simply put, stop talking. Just stop talking. But yeah, I mean that's everything. That's such a gift too.
Yeah, and just kind of knowing what that's going to be like, it's going to be really hard. I'm going to be in my head. I'm going to
Mhm.
be, as you described, clenching my fists. I'm going to
Sure.
have things that I am dying to say that I am
Yeah.
not going to, and I'm just going to sit there.
Yeah. It's like, where did she go? I'm here.
I'm
Um,
here. I'm listening.
but also, and maybe we could end with this is the other piece of this is to be compassionate to yourself as well, and to know that mindful listening is a practice, which means that if you don't get it right away, to not bash yourself because it takes time and effort, and it's hard to do.
You're right, and, it is a practice. It is like building any other muscle, so we can't expect to be, benching above our weight. We need to start with where we're at. So I will report back next time how successful I've been keeping my mouth shut.
I don't you have so many good things to say. I'm If you do keep your mouth shut, let's not keep it shut for too long, because I think
No.
most people who engage with you, they want to hear from you, and the stuff that you have to say it's not negative. They're always inspiring and supportive. So
Unless you're married to me, John, let's be real. Like
okay, yeah, I don't know that Noel. I don't know the Noel that says why do you do it that way, because you've never said that to me.
No.
But the Noel I do know, she doesn't need to keep her mouth shut.
Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you so much. This was fun.
Yeah, all right, guys, be well.
Ready to cut through the BS of becoming a coach? Snag John and Noelle's 6-step guide to becoming a life coach at journey.co/everything. That's JRNI.co/everything. If what you've heard here today speaks to you and you want to learn a little bit more about becoming a coach, visit journey.co, JRNI.co. We've graduated nearly 1,000 coaches and offer vibrant community, strong lifetime support, and world-class coaching education. We're fully ICF accredited and look forward to watching how you use coaching to make a bigger impact in the world around you.